We travel about 350 kilometers from Nairobi to Transmara, West Narok County. Now, in the military, stores officers are very important. They're also famously known as color officers. Reason being, they're in charge of the morale of officers. And by morale, I mean clothes, weapons, and most importantly, food. We are here in Engarianitu, in Transmara, West Narok County, to visit one military officer by the name of John Olesuntu, who was a color officer during his time and also served in 3 peace missions in the continent and beyond. Well, we're here to file his story. He has said it's a long way from here, so let's go. We meet a military veteran a few kilometers from his home, and we have to trek half an hour to get to his homestead. The residents of Nkorienito are majorly pastoralists, and we pass by his herd of livestock grazing a short distance from his home. We finally arrive at his home.
Karibuni. Asante sana bwana Joe. Basi kwa majina ninaitwa retired senior sergeant John Olesuntu. Nimesaliwa mwaka wa 1961 upande wa Megwara location Transmara sub county, Narok County.
After his early education, Olesuntu was lucky to be enrolled in the military.
Mwaka wa 84 niliajiriwa kazi ya jeshi. Nilipotangazwa nikaenda Narok, nikaajiriwa. Nilipoajiriwa nikaenda training FTC. Saizi inaitwa KMA. Nikafanya training pale miezi 6, nikamaliza. Nilipomaliza nikapelekwa transfer kutoka recruit, nikaenda kikosi cha kwanza one care. Nimekaa pale miaka karibu 25 katika one care.
Ulijiunga na one care?
Yeah.
Ni majukumu gani ilikuwa ya kwanza ya wewe kufanya?
Mimi ni trainer za infantry na niliingia katika infantry unit nikiwa rifleman. Lakini baadaye mimi nikakuja nikaingia kwanza Skinola, nikafanya training ya Skinola for 9 months. Nikamaliza. Nilipomaliza ndio nikaenda Namibia, nikajiunga sasa, nikaenda tena change trade, nikaingia katika stores logistics. So nikaingia katika administrative. So nikafanya hiyo kazi for almost about kwa ajili jeshi nimefanya for 31 years 279 days which is 9 months. Ndio nilifanya jeshi, nikaretire nikiwa senior sergeant kutoka kikosi cha 15.
In 1990, under Lieutenant General Daniel Opande, Olesuntu was part of the United Nations Transition Assistance Group, UNITAG, UN Peacekeeping Force, deployed from April 1989 to March 1990 to Namibia, known at the time as Southwest Africa, to monitor the peace process and elections there.
89, nikafanikiwa nikaenda Namibia, tukafanya kazi pale, na hapo ndio jeshi letu lilinua jina la Kenya juu. Hata wazungu walikuwa akiangaliwa, wanasema kweli jeshi la Kenya liko na watu wenye discipline ya hali ya juu na well trained.
He was part of 2 other UN peacekeeping missions.
Tukakuja tukaenda AMSOM 2013 December.
Umeweza kwenda katika peace mission 3. Kazi yako hususan ilikuwa ni gani na ni yapi uliweza kuyaona?
Nilikuwa rifleman. So hapo kazi ilikuwa ngumu because tulikuwa tunaenda kuweka wale watu wajue ya kwamba independent ni nini. na tulipoenda tukaleta uhusiano nzuri zaidi sana, na tukaingiana na wananchi na hata wale walikuwa wakisimamia huko kwa ajili kulikuwa na majeshi ya South Africa, wakakubali ya kwamba hapa sasa ni hawa wanatosha kufanywa nini, kupatiwa independent Namibia. 1992 nikakuja kubadilisha, nikaenda katika logistics, storekeeper. So wakati nilipokuja kwenda Southern Sudan nilikuwa storekeeper. So nilikuwa CQMS ya company. Mimi ndio nilikuwa ninafanya logistic ya company yote mzima. So kila kitu ile mahitaji ya askari anahitaji.
In those missions, working as a logistics officer, also known as Kala, he explains why these officers are very essential in any mission.
Kazi ya Kala ni muhimu, ndio roho sasa ya kila kitu. Unajua Kala ako na kila chochote anayehitajika katika kwa askari. Yeye ndiye ako na chakula, ako na mafasi, ako na viatu, ako na chochote ile ina askari anayohitaji kuanzia mguu mpaka kichwa. Tumbo ni Kala. So ni mtu mmoja muhimu naye pia katika kazi hiyo, na yeye ndiye anapigana vita kubwa kuona watu yake wameshiba, wako na moral, ile kitu inayohitajika anawatafutia kwa haraka sana wapate. Kama ni silaha mpya anataka kuhakikisha kwamba watu yake nayo wako na hizo vitu. So chochote ile inayohitajika mpaka ipitia katika mikononi mwa Kala. Na ndio sasa unapoangalia yeye ni mtu, yeye ni kama sasa mama ya kila mmoja. Tulikuwa tunafanya kazi usiku na mchana kwa ajili wale watu wako huko mbele wanahitaji mahitaji kutoka kwetu. Na sisi lazima naye tukasike pande hii na hawa nayo wapate kufanya kazi pale mbele.
And having seen war firsthand, he enlightens Kenyans on the essence of peace.
Amani ni kitu moja mzuri sana. For example, ukiona tu hata nyumba peke yake kifaragana. Kanyumba tu kadogo kifaragana. Hata yule mtoto hakuwa anajua ni kitu gani inaendelea, atakosa siku hiyo chakula. Because mama amefaragana na mzee na hivyo. Sasa unaona tu hapo ni ka small portion ya mafaragano. So amani katika nchi inahitajika zaidi sana, tuwe watu wa amani, na tunaomba Mungu kwa ajili Kenya letu ni watu wa kupenda amani. Tumeenda nchi za nje tukileta amani. So amani ni kitu moja muhimu zaidi sana.
After 31 years in service, he admits reintegration back to the society was a challenge at first.
Sisi ni watu wa timing. Kitu cha kwanza timing. Mimi nikiambiwa mkutano inakuwa saa fulani, hiyo saa nimefika. So ninapofika katika hiyo mkutano unakuta watu wengine bado hawajafika, huwa inanisumbua zaidi sana. Why? Kwa nini hao watu hawezi keep time? So kukop up na hii timing bado haijaingiana mpaka saa hizi. Saa hii niko na karibu miaka 9, 10 na haijaingiana.
He challenges young soldiers to take advantage of the numerous opportunities in the forces to better themselves.
Nafurahi sana kwa jeshi na ninawapenda zaidi sana. Kitu cha kwanza nilienda kuendelea na masomo. Masomo yangu vile nilipotoka nilikuwa darasa la 7, lakini nilienda kusoma mpaka sasa nimetoka, nilikuwa equivalent of a person who is ako na diploma kwa ajili ya masomo. Kitu naona kwamba ilikuja kufungua wanajeshi macho ni wakati wa Tonje. Tonje alifanya kazi nzuri zaidi kwa wanajeshi na alibadilisha mambo mengi zaidi sana, na ikawa sasa wanajeshi ndio wakaanza kujijua kwamba kumbe, na ukaona matraining zingine zikikuja zikifundishwa ya kwamba there is one day and one time utawacha jeshi na utaenda kuungana na raia.
The father of 4 is now in his retirement but still keeps himself busy.
Niko na mke moja na niko na watoto 3 na 4 nimeadapt. Niko na ng'ombe zangu. Nafanya kazi kidogo kidogo. Huwa ninapenda kusoma Biblia. Mimi ninapenda nyimbo sana za dini, tena mimi ni mwalimu wa nyimbo.
And as we leave Narok County, it's evident that this former soldier is still very energetic and wants the best for the country. For Military Tales, I'm Ben Troy-Njue.
A very good morning to you. Happy New Year. This is the first Bizz Check show this year, 2026. My name is Kiptum, and Caroline Joroge is my colleague on the sign language interpretation. Now, we want to open up the year with an understanding of how to manage our finances. How do you get out of debt if you are in deep, bad debt? And how do you ensure that you are investing right this year? To have this conversation is Victor Marangu, the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Wealth Pro Africa. He's with us in studio discussing financial planning in 2026. Karibu sana, Victor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Maybe before we get into the topic of the day, just tell us who Wealth Pro Africa is and why you have Wealth Pro Africa in existence.
Yeah, thank you, Betty, and Happy New Year, viewers. I created Wealth Pro Africa out of a rising need for financial literacy. The latest data shows that over 70% of the sub-Saharan Africa adult population are financially illiterate. That shows a huge disparity between financial inclusion and financial literacy. Yes, we have so many people who have can access accounts, can access banking, especially mobile banking. But when it comes to how they manage their finances, how they plan for their finances, there's a huge gap. And that's how I founded Wealth Pro Africa, to empower Africans with basic financial literacy skills to be able to plan their finances and hit a certain number I call the financial wellness number. A financial wellness number is when your passive income, that is income from your investments, is equal to or greater than your rate of expenditure. And I would urge everyone listening to this show right now to look at their financial situation and ask themselves, from their investments, can the returns they get sustain their current living expenses? So if everyone has that in mind, then people understand their why they work every morning, they rise up every morning to go to work, why they make certain decisions. So even making investment decisions now becomes totally different. So Wealth Pro Africa was created in that. So we have created an ecosystem to help individuals learn, plan, save, invest, protect, and grow their wealth. And we have created an app for that particular purpose called the Wealth Pro app. If you visit the Wealth Pro website, you get the Wealth Pro app, download it, and you can see what we are about at Wealth Pro Africa.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. The festive period shows some patterns that Kenyans have when it comes to handling money. Yeah. There's a lot of expenditure in December during the festive period, and then when it comes to January, there are bills to be paid, there's school fees to be paid, and it's always the same story year in, year out. Yeah. So why is it important to prioritize financial planning for Kenyans this year?
Financial planning is mission critical, just like diet. Like the way you watch your diet, you should be able to watch your financial plan. You realize that people right now, this month, for example, have a lot of pressure, and everybody is talking about how their kid is going to join a high school and everything else, as if it is news. If someone was in class 8 or whichever grade now, grade 9, we're going to grade 10 or something like that, you realize that it's automatic that they will go to the next grade So you realize people start saying, oh, you know, I'm taking my kid to the next grade and everything else. In essence, they are trying to say, maybe they are struggling with finances that they may need a address or something like that. What I would want to urge Kenyans is that, and everybody listening, is that we're in January and there'll still be December. You have to remove this thing of January, December. The bills you pay in January, the same bills you pay in April, the same bills you pay in September or any other particular month. So if someone wants to have a good festive season, they should plan for it now. Not right now people are crying and then it comes to quarter four, they realize, oh, I need to go to Mombasa for holiday. That's a vicious cycle that actually is so systematic, because when in high school we were being busy taught the mole concept, the dichotomous key, and all those manner of things, I think this is at the particular point when we ought to have been taught financial planning. What is inflation? How does tax affect your ability to build wealth? And things like that. So financial planning is mission critical, especially this year when we have, of course, World Bank and IMF have projected economic growth between 4.9 and 5.2%. But that is at the macro level. But when you come to the household level, you realize that, for instance, sukuma wiki and tomato, the pricing has risen 30%, 23% respectively. So you realize that the realities on the ground are not reflective, or whatever the World Bank is projecting is not reflective of what's happening in the household. It becomes now very critical to have a financial plan to be able to manage the pressure that is coming with it. You talk about, for example, the pension, the NSSF Tier 2, in February it's going to increase the coming month. So that will put the pressure. So we have what we call the shrinking pay slip phenomena. You realize now people have to still plan for more even when they have the same amount that they were planning for last year. Then they also have to factor in inflation. Inflation is also taking up. So you find the budgeting rule, the 50-30-20 rule that people used to apply before is not making sense now. You have to migrate to what I'm calling the 70-20-10, whereby 70 is taking the necessities because you have to factor in inflation. And I've not even spoken about the food inflation, generally, the education inflation. When you talk about the headline inflation at 5%, it does not tell you the underlying factors. For example, the cost of fuel. To charge up your electricity tokens, and also to be able to fuel your car or pay for the fare. Those are the things that actually eat up your pay slip or your earnings. Because when you mention the pay slip, that's the informal sector, the formal sector. But the informal sector, which forms almost 83% of the workforce, still now face more pressure because they don't have regular income. Now, financial planning becomes mission critical. For those in the informal sector, they can apply what we call the Hill and Valley method of budgeting, whereby during the high earning periods, you're able to skim off excess earnings to preserve it for when you don't have a lot of money. For example, those people who are paid on commissions or people running the gig economy, you this time you've gotten a job. For example, those people who do events, this particular period, there may not be so many events this month, but there are so many events in December. So a wise person in December would have made sure that they have skimmed off the excesses into the following month when there will be no events, so that during the low moments, you're able to survive off the high moments. For example, sales professionals who are commission only, who I normally train sales professionals. I teach them to be able to, when you get a high commission, that particular period of time, just manage with your expenses. Don't increase your expenditure because your earnings have increased. So you make sure that the following month you have a buffer. So personal financial planning is very mission critical, and we need people to be now more deliberate. Because again, when it comes to taxation, you've seen with e-teams, now the informal sector cannot escape the KRA dragnet, because now we are talking about digitization of tax collection. So that one expands the tax base for the government, of course, to be able to pay debt and be able to manage, to fund infrastructural development and also fund education. So it's very important now that people become more digital, you cannot underestimate the power of the apps, the digital apps that can help you do your budgeting. For example, the World Pro app has got a budgeting feature that enables you to be able to do budgeting based on your level. Rules like 50, 20, 30, 70, 20, 10 and all that kind of stuff may not apply to ultra high net worth individuals, because for them, if you tell them to allocate 50% of their income, they'll be like, my guy, I can't allocate 50 billion or 20 billion into living expenses. So this comes to serve the lower income and the middle income, even the upper income earners. Because you have to live within your means. So a budgeting app shows you, the app is AI powered in the sense that it is able to tell you, Betty, you have overspent in eating out, or you have spent too much in entertainment. We are on the 8th day of the month and you have exhausted your entertainment budget. So those kind of insights, they are more about behavioral modification to help an individual understand that how they behave with money, it is not straight line. It is their psychological makeup. Right. But how do you ensure that you understand your psychological makeup and your psychology about money and how you behave, so that at the end of the day, you're able to live within your means and avoid the pressures. In the world of Instagram, Facebook, Reels and everything else, when people are showing what, with AI these days, someone can show you in a cruise, they can show you in a yacht. And what that happens is they fires you up to start making bad investment decisions or bad financial decisions. You want to go to the cruise the next time. You don't know how these people are funding their lifestyle. Right. But with such an app, you're able to stay on target. The other thing is things like goal setting. You know you're not going to spend on this because I have to make sure that I'm able to fund my kids' education as a goal that I'm working towards. So digital apps are very critical because the government is also now going digital when it comes to tracking taxation.
So it's important to have it done digitally.
Yes, yes.
You've talked about the issue of goal setting.
Yeah.
And different people would have different goals, understandably, because of where they are in life. Yeah. And so I would like you to speak to a Kenyan who may be starting the year with some little income or is starting a business. How do you set your financial goals for the year?
Great. So goal setting, sometimes it kind of sounds cliche because people speak about goal setting. I want to set my goals. I want to set my goals. I want to be rich. I want to make a lot of money. But that is so vague. Goals require a systematic approach. And there is this acronym called SMART, the SMART goal setting. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, that you can be able to adopt to set a goal. Is actually part of one of the lessons in my personal financial planning course. In the beginner level, the first lesson is actually setting SMART goals. Now, when it comes to setting goals, yes, people set goals. People say, I am going to be rich, or I want to pay off my debt. Unless you say specifically how you're going to do that. Is at the end, I want to settle my debt. My debt is 3 million. To settle my debt, I want to be paying this particular amount of money for this particular period of time. And then it has to be realistic in the relevant, in the sense that you have to look at your income and then give yourself a timeline. Within 12 months, I'll be done with this particular debt, and then you work towards it every other month. But then there is one particular area that people miss when they are setting goals: inflation, and taxation, and the black tax. People forget that when they are setting goals. You set your goals, you want to plan your life so well, but then along the road you realize that you're not achieving your goals because you want to send some money to your brother or your sister or your cousin. For some reason you don't understand it. So you call you emotionally and all that kind of stuff, and then you fail to contribute to your goal that particular time. So that is why it is very good to integrate black tax. Black tax is not necessarily a bad thing. This is originated in South Africa. It's an Ubuntu thing. I am because you are, and understanding that we are raised by a community. So if you are raised by a community, if you come out here in Nairobi, you get opportunities. When you start earning, that is not your money. All of it is not your money. A percentage has to be sent home at some point. And I've not even spoken about people in the consolidation phase who are raising kids and they are taking care of aging parents, even before I get there. So it is very important when you're setting your goal, you factor in inflation. For example, if you say, I want to buy my car will cost me 5 million and I want to buy it in the next 2 years. So you have to ask yourself, what is the current inflation? If inflation is 5%, you have to set your goal plus 5% per annum. So if your goal is a million, you have to add 5% of that, so that you can be able to match up with the inflation factor. So within 2 years, you can see now that is already a 10% or more because of the compounding effect of the same increment. So every time you set a goal, you put an inflation factor. And also note that in achieving this particular goal, I will still need to take care of my relatives, my parents, my siblings, kids, and things like that, because in a family, the way we are raised, we are not all the same. So the African pressure to be able to take care of your family, to look good in front of your extended family, even when you go home for Christmas, the way people are looking at you, you want to look good. In the attempt to look good, sometimes the way you fund your goal, you end up spending that money to look good in front of your man. That's the aspect of black tax. Things like medical expenses. If your mom is sick and you're saving for your car, you not even think about your car. You have to go and take care of your family first. So it's important to also understand how to leverage things like insurance. When you're planning, you also plan for health insurance and take advantage of SHIF, for example, but also understand that SHIF alone will not take care of all your medical expenses. Still, the private medical insurance is still important to be able to supplement, because if you need advanced care, you have to go back into your pocket to fund over and above the SHIF provision. So if you have aging parents and things like that, because sometimes you could be earning a very good amount of money and all that kind of stuff, but now your parents don't have a good medical cover. Do you know your money all of it can go there? So I urge everyone, where the way you look at goal setting right now, go digital, factor in inflation, use the budgeting apps like for the Wealth Pro app again, and there are so many other apps that people can use. Why I find Wealth Pro app becoming very important, because you are able to learn and also now be able to do. You're not taken to a 2-day workshop and then you understand about finances. It's an everyday thing. And when you set the goal now, don't wait until Q1 to review it. Ask yourself what is happening every other month. Am I still aligned with my goal? Don't be surprised in December that, oh, I missed my 52-week savings challenge by this much. That is something you can anticipate and be able to track the progress as time progresses. Yes. Yeah.
In terms of meeting your financial goals, there's a lot of discipline that is required. And as you've mentioned, of course, tracking is important. Now, I'd like you to tell us more about the financial mistakes that Kenyans make when they are planning and even in the implementation phase that prevents us from reaching those goals.
The number one killer of failure to achieve goals is failure to plan. You realize that most of the people, because of what you call fear of missing out, because someone said, I'm investing here, I'm doing this, they run to it, and then they realize that someone puts an investment and then they realize next month they had not anticipated something they needed to pay. They go withdraw that. So you see, that's a goal already not achieved. The other mistake is what we call land banking. There has been this hype that land in the satellite towns has been appreciating at very high rates and all that kind of stuff. But the reality on the ground right now, you realize that, for example, you hear someone has bought a plot of land in Joska, Kamuru, Kantafu, Isinya, where, and this is, they're telling you, hii ni ya mtoto ya kusomesha mtoto. You bought an eighth ya kusomesha mtoto. How is that going to educate your kid when appreciation of that land is less than 5% per year? If it's less than 5% per year, what did I say inflation is again? 5%. You are zero balance in terms of growth. You're not growing at all. So you realize that someone who put the same money in a treasury bill or put it in a money market fund is earning a double-digit return, which beats inflation, and they have access to liquidity. By the time you say now it's January, who is now going to pick a plot of land to start selling so that they can pay school fees? Illiquid asset. You see, sometimes people can say they are solvent. You know, being solvent is when your assets are greater than your liability, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Do you know that could be possible if you're owning land? But are you liquid? Are you liquid?
You're not liquid.
You get someone as a piece of land, they have land everywhere. You ask them, the kid needs 1 million to go to school. They cannot raise that 1 million. So it's very important to plan around being asset poor and cash rich. And say cash rich, these are financial instruments that you're holding in the form of a treasury bill, a government bond, a money market fund, an equity fund, a fixed income fund, or a multi-asset special funds. Some of the fund categories that are doing really, really well, giving returns of an average of about 20% net of tax, net of management fee. So we need to remove the Kenyan mentality of goal setting. Most of the people, they say, nipate kazi, ninunue kashamba, kaploti nijenge, nianze kuokota rent. That is too PO box right now. That is too old at the moment. The way people are approaching real estate investments, these days they're investing indirectly into real estate. They are using what we call real estate investment trusts. I'm sure you've heard about student accommodation, you have heard Kwetu, you have heard the Econ rates. Okay, this is what we call the development rates and investment rates. Those are giving double-digit returns on investment, as opposed to someone who bought an eighth, built a squeezed apartment there where people park outside. If at all, of course, someone who is parking a car is not even living there. Sometimes with people with misplaced priorities, they have bought a car that they park outside. So you realize that it's important to be able to understand that the caretaker will connive with the tenants. They'll tell you this one has not paid, this one has paid. Sometimes you're living in Thika and you have a plot somewhere in Kangundo Road and where, and you're going there to collect. At the end of the day, you find yourself, you're just serving the masses. And the people who can afford your rent, the kind of rentals you've built, they are not people who are well-to-do also. So you realize that you build to relieve yourself of your financial pressures, but you still put yourself in trouble. But again, I don't blame that person who makes such a decision, because we were never taught these things in school. They were not systematically instilled in us. The way when you went to school, you did not know how to read and write. But you went to school and understood how to read and write. Yeah. I wish we were also taught how to invest, how to save, and how to plan. And that is what we are solving at Wealth Pro Africa. So it is very important, when you want to achieve your goals, you have to factor in all these things that I've mentioned. Inflation. Someone tells you, my fund is giving you a return of 8%. They tell you a return of 8%. If it's an interest-bearing assets that is invested in that particular fund, you attract a withholding tax of 15%. So 15% subtract from the 8%, you realize that chops you off almost about 7 thereabout. And then you adjust for inflation. When you're adjusting for inflation, if the return is 8%, 5% off, you are remaining with 3%. Now that factor in your withholding tax I've talked about. Yeah. So you realize that you're actually not growing. You seem to have a lot of property, you seem to have your life moving around, but when you come to analyzing your net worth, another feature also in the Wealth Pro app that helps you track your net worth. Actually, that's the first dashboard you see when you open the app. You're able to see your net worth, liabilities, assets, and liabilities. So when you look at your net worth, you should be able to see whether you're actually in the negative or in the positive. And then whether that positive is sustainable as years goes by, whether the returns you're getting are beating inflation. So when you're setting goals, make sure how you finance your goals, you're beating inflation. Because if you're not beating inflation, you're not making sense at the end of it. You're just moving on. If you're employed, you're hoping and praying that you get the next pay rise. But when people get pay rise, I don't know what happens. They decide where they are living is not making sense. They move. They
move to leafier suburbs.
Then they realize this guy is getting cranky. You know, he's cranky. And when I go to visit my friends, they have nice cars and everything, as you take that. Then you realize your net worth has not changed at all. Do you know someone who's seemingly doing very well, they have properties and everything else, you could be having a similar net worth with them. When they offset their abilities, you become the same, or you're even doing better than them. When you thought you are living a modest life, but when those people actually even out assets and liabilities are crossed out, they have nothing. They keep leveraging, they keep leveraging. And that's what I want to urge Kenyans. Please, don't, if you find yourself in a house, stop digging further. Stop digging further. Start making sacrifices. Even saying like, I will move out of this house and move to a lower house. You don't care what people will say. People who can make such bold moves, these are the people who are hardwired to make money. Again, you can also be optimistic and say, I'll take a side hustle, I'll work harder, but when I even out, I'm not going to increase my, what you call lifestyle inflation. I'm not going to increase my expenditure because now I started making more money. I'll keep skimming off my excessive earnings into investments that will take me to the financial wellness number, whereby my passive income is equal to or greater than my rate of expenditure. And then I can say I'm financially free.
You mentioned the issue of debt management. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because even before you start investing, there are a lot of Kenyans who are stuck in debt and maybe they do not know how to get out of it. Is there something called good debt? What is good debt? What is bad debt? And how can someone be financially healthy even with debt?
Debt is good. And to show you how significant debt is, the debt market is the largest globally, apart from the FX market. It is 3 times the stock market. The equity market, the debt market is 3 times. The debt market is 3 times the equity market. Why? Because world economy runs on debt. Okay? So, and debt as an investment tool, debt has a shelf life. Okay? So if I lend you money, I've given you a timeline to pay this money, and there is a cost to it called the interest rate.
Yes.
Okay? So now, how do you leverage debt to get into financial wellness? This is where good debt comes in. It is the debt, for example, if you go to a circle and take a loan, of course your loan is guaranteed by your circle contribution, and of course there's a guarantor to that. You get 3-4 times your contribution. You take a loan at 10%, for example, or 12%. You take that circle loan at 12%. Then you put it in a multi-asset strategy fund that is giving you 20%. Okay? I don't want to mention funds here because I mentioned the names. It will seem like I'm promoting a particular fund. But if you Google recently, even online, you see a lot of people putting in their statuses or social media of major investment banks and fund managers. You see returns of 36%, 46%, 20%, 13%. So if you go take that 12% loan from your circle and put it in a fund that is giving you 20%, you have a net of what?
8%.
8%. So by the time you finish off clearing your circle loan, you have already made money. Now, that is good debt. Bad debt. Someone decides, I'm tired of Route 11. I'm tired of working. I will take a car loan, and this car loan will be deducted from my pay slip. You remember the shrinking pay slip phenomena we are already facing?
Right.
With SHIF and the Tier 2, NSF Tier 2 contribution kicking in February, and we are talking about some uncapped, and then the housing levy, uncapped deductions. Then a 1 million car, for example, maybe you'll be paying 40, 50 or 60,000 per month. You take that, but you forget that a car, when you buy a car has got its needs. You need to fuel the car. You need to service the car. So 60,000, you also add, because if you bought this car and you're not living very well off, it means you're not living here in Kilimani or in Lavington or just around here. You're living far off. Maybe 50 kilometers or 25 kilometers. And you know 25 kilometers to one CBD can take you even 2 hours or 3 hours.
Depending on traffic.
So what do cars do when they're sitting in traffic? They consume more fuel and there is more wear and tear. It's a small engine, you're putting a lot of pressure on it. It's running on gear 1 from survey to CBD, okay? So consumes a lot of fuel. So what happens is that the 60,000 you thought you're spending maybe 120. And now because you have a car, you have to show up where the guys are with cars are. You have to show up in a nice restaurant, you're in a nice pub, you spend more money. So what you thought was going to help you, now that is a bad debt. Now a good debt could be in the same scenario of a car. They say a sales professional who buys a car and they're able to access areas they could not access. That is a good debt. You have your car, you have a good image, people can see how you're looking nice, you're dressed well. You know, people buy you before they buy what you're selling. Yeah. So if you're taking a loan to finance, it's like you financed your business. That is a capital expenditure. For a salesperson or a commissioned agent buying a car to be able to access wider market, that is a good debt. So bad debts are mostly consumer goods. You buy electronics, you're chasing every version of iPhone, iPhone 17, iPhone 18, which will be coming up. You have all the iPhones, so you're chasing the latest. What happens is that you find someone is still having iPhone 12, it's still functional, and they have more money than you has got an iPhone 17. So what is it at the end of the day that people normally chase? So debt management is very critical. It puts a lot of pressure into families, especially those families that don't discuss finances together. Kila mtu is running their own show, and then you see someone is so stressed, you wonder what is happening. You think you're actually the problem, so you're not even the problem. You think you're stressing your partner, so they have other financial pressures that are pressuring them. So when it comes to debt management, inside the Wealth Pro app, again, we put the debt management tool that gives you two options. This is what we call the snowball and the avalanche method. So the snowball is whereby you want a psychological feel of clearing off small debts as you go to the bigger ones, because it's called the snowball effect. You small ones and then becomes big. And then you're also looking at the avalanche, whereby you pay high interest rates. The debts with high interest rates, you pay them off first, and then you end up with other smaller ones. So debt management becomes, you have to plan for debt management. And remember, when you're managing your debt, does not mean that your life stops.
Yes.
That is why now budgeting becomes very important. So you can say in my 70-20-10, this 20 should go to investment / debt servicing. Okay, and 10 should be your life. You should be living, because if you're not living a good life, you're not eating very well. How will you manage your debt? So people get stressed with debt management because they probably pay it off and then end up with no means of life, and then they end up being stressed. You should be able to renegotiate. Go to your bank, go to whoever is giving you the loan, and talk about restructuring that loan so that you can be able to relieve yourself the pressure. So if you are to repay it within a year, you can push it to 2 years and have that arrangement. And then when it comes to discretionary spending, you can also allocate more of your discretionary spending to clear off because with inflationary pressures rising, the funding the necessities is becoming mission critical. We're taking like 70% of the household budget. So when you're servicing your debt, please remember to live. Organize to pay off high interest debts, avoid interest rates, debts like Fuliza. If you don't take care of Fuliza, if you take your statement and look at how much Fuliza is taking, because sometimes you're paying and then you realize, Fuliza is available, and then you don't pay it off. Mobile loans. Why do we have so many mobile loans? They are preying on people who are already beaten by debt. Okay? You are told logbook alone within 2 hours. Okay? What is the percentage of people able to service their logbook loans without their car being repossessed? Go to the auction yards, you'll find so many of them. So that's why I'm saying, if you're in debt, if you're in a pit, stop digging further. Go try to renegotiate your debt, and also try to pay off the smaller debts so that you end up with a big one, and then you can renegotiate that. Then I think stop taking loan for consumer spending, especially in these hard economic times. These hard economic times demand survival. And also, this is the time also to skill up. You take new courses that will enable you take up other jobs that you could not take before. These days with AI, there are so many courses, automating digital marketing, for example. Lead nurturing can be done automatically, things like that. If you can sell that to a small business, they'll take it as an option. Instead of setting up a whole digital marketing agency, they can be able to, they can hire you for a small, and then you have so many of them doing that. And then at the end of the day, you're making a lot of money. For example, Gen Zs, those who are very sharp, they are making more money even than their parents. If they are taking huge contracts with big corporations, they are saying, you guys have hired 20 people to do this one role. I can create you one AI agent to replace all this at a fraction of the cost. And then they go and do that to so many companies. This is someone who is making a lot of money. So getting out of debt, if you're in debt, that is not the end of it. That's not a condemnation that now, yako imeisha, you start making bad decisions. This is the time you dig deep into financial literacy, understanding how to manage debt and get out of debt. So debt is good if it is utilized well. Debt is bad if you utilize it badly. Yeah.
I like that you've mentioned even the issue of mobile loans, because predatory lending was very bad. CBK had to step in to try and regulate that sector. It's still a problem. Kenyans are borrowing on this app to pay on this app, you know, so that they are not caught up with by those lenders. And
those lenders are actually also selling your data. Because they tell you, take a photo, do this. They take everything. You're auctioning your all, because your data is also very valuable in the modern world. Because AI models are also learning from that particular data. They are learning from your habits. And another thing I forgot to mention is the buy now, pay later. I wrote an article the other day, buy now, pay later. That's a very serious debt trap. You find you want to get an iPhone, for example. They tell you, don't worry, just give us 10%, then you can pay us in the next 3 years. By the time that you're paying the next 3 years, you have paid this phone like 6-10 times over. So buy now, pay later. Be careful how you approach it. You want to upgrade your lifestyle, yes, but at what cost?
Yeah, at what cost? Retirement planning, let's talk about that, because a lot of Kenyans, it almost looks like are caught unawares by retirement, yet we all know it's coming. So what are the tenets of proper retirement planning?
Great. Retirement planning, again, is something we took as Wealth Pro Africa. We loaded it up again into the Wealth Pro app. The app has so many features
clearly
to help you visualize your retirement. And retirement here is relative. In the formal sector, people say retirement at age 60, at age 65. But I can assure you, you tell a Gen Z retire at 65, they will be like, grandma, grandpa. What are those? So these are people who have the potential even to retire at the age of 35. People can retire at the age of 30. They have that golden opportunity to be able to do that. Now, let us come now to the realities on the ground. The reason as to why you realize that the total pension fund contribution or the assets under management for the pensions industry is somewhere about 3 trillion. That 3 trillion cannot cater adequately for people during their retirement. Why people fail to plan for retirement is somehow psychological. People don't care about the other person. People are selfish. People are very selfish. They take care about themselves this particular time. This is what I'm trying to explain. You want to self-preserve. So when you tell someone you are age 26, do you know when you're old you need this money? They are like, they are not able to fathom and see that 20 years later or 30 years later. So you can calculate all that and all that, but it may not make sense to them. Why? They don't understand the bias they normally have. I picked this from the book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, whereby when people are thinking about the future, it seems so distant. The future seems so distant. They are not like, they want to take care of themselves right now, because you say 5 years from now, that's a stranger. Do you know that? Yourself 5 years from now, you're a stranger. You don't care about yourself 5 years from now. You want to worry about what is making you happy at the moment. And that's why financial literacy becomes very important, and for people also to learn from their parents, see what their parents are going through and what their parents would have done back then. Looking back becomes much easier because it seems like the other day. But looking into the future looks so distant. So we teach that at World Pro Africa for people to appreciate that the future, 5 years from now, there are those things that really matter to you right now that will not matter to you in 5 years from now. But you have to maintain that long term. So how do we carve that gap? Teaching people their financial wellness. Because you can retire anytime you want when your financial wellness number is achieved. When you say, in my life, if I'm making 1.5 million every month, I am done. Okay? There are people who would say that. Then you ask yourself, is my income from investments funding that? If my income from investments is funding that, then you can retire. So retirement planning needs to be very, very deliberate. And it's also affected by black tax. You realize that you want to save for your retirement, then you have to take care of your parents. You wonder, what am I going to do? Because if your parents did not have a formal employment, pension becomes, it's a mirage. So they have to live on probably the properties they acquired back then, and some of them are still holding on to it. They don't want to sell it. When you tell them about money market fund, growing up they didn't know what money market fund is, becomes a big problem. So they remain solvent, but they remain illiquid. So retirement planning must be approached from the point of, it is not a blanket refinement. Like, all of us must retire at this particular age. People retire at different ages, 55, 50, 30, 35. So what are you working on to make sure that you have invested enough to sustain you even when you're not working? So that people don't start looking at retirement like the things for the old people. Because that is the reluctance we find with the young people, thinking retirement planning is for the people who are retiring or people who are retired.
Right.
Retirement planning is for people who are not yet retired, for the people who are young, for people who are strong. So we normally say your peak earning years should be able to maintain your dignity during your retirement. So if people are taught like that, they start looking at things differently. That's why financial literacy becomes very critical. We stop looking at retirement as that for the old people, and also start appreciating that even as we're setting our retirement plan, we have to factor in things like inflation again. If you say 1.5 million now, 1.5 million 20 years from now may not even take you where you anticipated. So you have to factor in, again, a 5% inflation year on year. You put the inflation factor on that. You say, I'll be increasing my contribution by 5% so that my 1.5 projection will still remain relevant in that particular time. You find people who are retiring now. Someone retires, they realize that they have gotten a lump sum, money they have never gotten in their entire life. They decide, I want to build a house. They go do the foundation. Before you see the first course,
the money is finished.
The money is finished. And they still owe the foreman. So it is very important to understand that the money you get during retirement, that is your nest egg. You don't take that money and start putting huge projects and all that kind of stuff to fund your lifestyle. Just put money in a money market fund or a balance fund, whichever fund that is professionally managed. Your portfolio manager is doing the work for you. All you're doing is getting the returns coming your way every other month or every other quarter or every other year.
It's very important for young people to definitely change their perspective on that.
Retirement is not for the old. Retirement is for the young. So that retirement planning, is for the young. You plan it early enough. You can realize to make a lot of money. If you use the retirement calculator here, for someone who is 26 years old, you put even 25,000. You realize that that money is so much money, 10 years, 20 years from now, that they can actually start leveraging. But who will you tell with the modern pressures without the basic principles installed in them in terms of formal education?
In just 1 minute, I'd like to hear from you. Some people say that, well, I am contributing to NSSF, so that should cover my retirement. What would you tell such people?
NSSF will not cover your retirement at all. This is a rule. Your retirement needs are actually 60 to 70% your current earning. So ask yourself, with your pension, the pensions you'll be receiving, is it 60 to 70% of your current earning? The answer is no. You have to augment retirement with the NSSF. You augment it with a private pension. Okay, there are several pensions that are being run professionally. They're giving better returns than the NSSF. Of course, even today, I don't know how much NSSF gives return every year. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But now you can even opt out of NSSF Tier 2 and put it in a professionally managed private pension and be able to run with that. Your NSSF will not take care of you during your retirement if that pension payout is not near 70% of your current pay slip.
Nice. Today we are learning how to manage our money better, to invest better and grow wealth. This is BizZ. We want to take a quick break. When we come back, we continue this conversation about money. Stay with us.
Unataka nini hapa?
Tuache haya mambo sio mazuri.
Basi babangu ni nani?
Kwa nini basi ukaniandika jina langu kando ya lake katika kitabu chako cha siri? Ha? Kunyamaza kwako ni ishara kuwa ni ukweli.
Hata wewe ukitaka.
Basi nakupa dakika 5 tu. Ama nipigie polisi.
Yaani maisha yako sasa yamekuwa ni ya tumaini.
Mbona una machungu na tumaini?
Kwa sababu yangu mwizi ameninyang'anya kitu ambacho ni cha maana sana kwa maisha yangu.
Dadi amepeleka Cindy shule, lakini najua amemwachia kwa fence.
Hii
School fees ya Cindy imelipwa yote.
umetoa wapi pesa za kununua viazi?
Hiyo sijali.
Mimi na Chief tunaulizana nini?
Hiyo kesi inakuhusu wewe.
Hizi ndio records zote uliachwa na Mira?
All 17 of them.
Itabidi nimwambie Chief, at least watoe kwa list ya wale kusaidiwa na serikali.
First of all, I'm very sorry.
Nyasi haijafiekwa, takataka imejaa. Huoni kiniharibia?
Tafanya kazi venye tuliagree.
3 days per week. Unajua natafuta pesa, lakini bila mpangilio utapoteza kuota.
What? I can't go on fooling myself. What I want most in this world is to marry you and be your wife.
What do you want? Are you going to reproach me again? I already told you that I'm going to do even the impossible.
Don't you realize that it's humiliating to be begging all the time? Especially now that Lucia is back with him.
What are you talking about? Did she tell you that?
They're looking for Mr. Rodrigo.
Who? Excuse us for interrupting, but we have with us an arrest warrant for Rodrigo Zúñiga. A warrant for me?
Why is that?
For the murder of Miss Ligia Cervantes.
Thank you for staying with BizZ. My name is Betty Kiptum, and Caroline Njoroge is my colleague on the sign language interpretation. And this morning we are talking about money, understanding money, how you treat your money better so that it can take care of you in the later years. We've just talked about retirement and how it's important for young people to remember that retirement planning is not for people who are nearing retirement, but for everybody who will be retiring at some point. And in studio I have Victor Marangu, the CEO and founder of Wealth Pro Africa. We now want to get a little bit practical, so to say.
Yeah.
And let's assume somebody earns 50,000 shillings. Yeah. That is their salary.
Yeah.
How do they plan themselves? How do they stay responsible with this money?
Yeah.
Please take us through that.
Yeah, thank you. I'll actually use one of our budgeting rules in our app. When you're earning 50,000, you need to be very stringent in your budgeting. A 50,000 income, this is how someone can allocate. I would advise them to apply the 50-30-20 rule. let's start with that 50-30-20 rule, whereby 50% covers your needs. These are essential expenses like rent, utilities, and insurance. So if, and to you, if you're earning 50,000 and you're paying a rent of 15,000, that's a mistake people make. If you're earning 50,000, your rent should not be more than 15% of your income. Your rent should never exceed 15% of your income. If you really want to live within your means.
Right.
Okay, but if you want to live to please other people, well and good. Lipata 20, it's still okay. But tutakutana kwa, I'm not able to do this, or kwetu we are cast, or we are what? Because people are not getting real with their finances. So 25% will go to needs, to cover the needs. This is the food, utilities, and insurance. That goes to, that's 25%. Then the wants. These are discretionary spending, entertainment, dining out, and subscriptions, internet, and of course you cannot do without internet these days. These days, internet is not for the rich. Internet is a basic human right, if I may use that. Because without internet, how do you access the world? You can't access the world. You can't even do shopping. You can't communicate to anybody without access to internet. So we put it under that. Kind of a basic need, but it's under 15,000, and then make sure 10,000 you don't touch it, no matter what. It goes to your savings, okay? Savings and retirement planning, that you can put it in a money market fund. What people don't imagine is that it's only 50,000, but they're not asking themselves, 50,000 in 12 months becomes how much? If you put 10,000 in month 1, in 12 months, how much is it? It's 120,000. It's 120,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this 120,000, if you don't touch it, and the next year you continue building that, in 5 years, what are we talking about? And we are assuming you don't even get a pay rise, you just live like that. So a 50,000 shillings earner, this is someone who is still in their growth stages. Okay? And during your growth stages, that is a time you should be very conscious of, if you are that stage, and you're still now dealing with pressures, because start dealing with pressures the moment you go to college. The moment you go to college, you realize now on your own, you have to know where to take the food. If you're not eating in a mess, you're living outside, you have to cook for yourself, you have to go to the market and do shopping and all those kind of stuff. But now, a 50K earner has still the same opportunity to live financially independent as someone who is earning 500,000. And now remember, being financially independent is very, very, very relative. But it has one common thing: being able to fund your living expenses without going an extra mile to borrow. Okay? So if that is how a 50K would play out, or even $1 million. If you're earning $1 million, it would still play out the same. But when you go beyond $1 million, then you start realizing that there are certain expenses, if I allocate 15%, it does not make sense. Does not make sense. So that's a meager earning, 50K. You need to understand that with the current pressures, for example, your deductions and all that, and I'm assuming this is net, this 50K is net, because it's subjected to taxation and everything else becomes much less. So whatever you do, the rule of the thumb, make sure that you don't touch 10% of that amount, no matter what. And have it automated. You know that automate, you put a standing order, you automate. Most of the mobile apps these days, you can automate. When the money lands, you can even tell it a percentage. Instead of an absolute amount like 10K, you said it. 10% of my money comes in, I don't want to see it in my balance. I want to see it in my balance when it comes to the investments, maybe a money market fund or something like that. I like what Safaricom is doing with their ZD money market fund, because from M-Pesa you can actually put that money there. And this also applies to the people in the informal sector, because you can say 50K and ignore people in the informal sector who will make 60, 10. 65, things like that. So you remember hills and valleys analogy that I gave. When you are at the top, you backfill. In engineering, you call it backfilling. You skim off what is excessive, and then you put it for the months that you will not have a lot. And still make sure that 10% always goes to an investment or savings. But you cannot save yourself to wealth. Okay, you have to invest to take advantage of the compounding effect. Because when you save, most of the savings accounts don't give you returns that can beat inflation. So the reason as to why we save is to accumulate to a certain level, and then you get to the minimum investment, and then you put money to investment. Yeah.
Right. So Victor, as we come to a close of the conversation, speak to a Kenyan, just give them 3 pointers, things they must keep in mind this year as they deal with their money.
Yeah. So things to keep in mind this year, I curated a number, and you have to start auditing month on month. If you really want to survive the year 2026, you need to audit month on month every coin. Every coin. I'm using coin. I don't want to go to the shilling. Every coin, where it goes, including when you pay off your M-Pesa, when you're paying in M-Pesa and then you realize you're told to freeze 2,000 or 1,500. If what you are about to pay and you realize that you will not fund your M-Pesa in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, that is money you're already losing. But at what convenience? So let us lay back and avoid consumerism and put more of what comes our way into investments. And then of course adjust our spending habits. With the rising inflation and being told the economy is going to grow by 5.2%, that one has not yet trickled down to the common mwananchi. It is a time to what you call tightening the belt. It's gonna be tough with the deductions and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to see employers increasing your pay because the tax has increased. You have to pay housing levy, you have to contribute to SHIF, your NSF Tier 2 contribution is uncapped, kicking in February. It is a time to tighten that belt. So it's a time to actually audit your every expenditure. And you can use that. You can use a digital app to be able to do that. You can a digital wallet, which you are able to track where your money goes. The other thing, join the 10% club. The 10% club, which I've just alluded to, is make sure that you don't see 10% of your income as your account balance. That is, it automatically deducted and put into a money market fund, not just a pure savings account, but a money market fund that is giving you 8, 9, 10, 12% year on year. Then you continuously contribute that every month. So don't touch 10% of your income this year. Don't touch it. At the end of the year, you realize that all those things that you give you pressure, Q4, holidays and everything will not become a problem. You realize that I actually don't want to go for holiday. You know, someone who has money cannot not go for holiday. It doesn't sound bad. But someone who doesn't have money and have not gone for holiday, they feel bad about it because they say, I didn't have an option. Then the other thing is diversify beyond an eighth of an acre in Kangudo Road. This land banking trap, people should avoid this thing of the ruse that you make money from real estate using the traditional way of investing. Let us go indirectly into real estate through rates, okay? So that we remove that notion of you must buy a plot of land. You listen, your uncle is telling you, buy that land, buy that piece of land. You know, kashamba ni mzuri, kashamba ni mzuri. And at the end of the day, you are struggling to pay school fees for your kids. Put your money where it works for you, to the extent that it becomes so good and so big that it funds you when you're no longer working.
Right.
Yeah.
Put your money in a place where it will fund you when you're not working.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Victor. Well, I hope that our viewers have taken pointers and will put this into consideration this year. Asante sana for your words. That is Victor Marangu, the CEO and founder of Wealth Pro Africa, talking to us how to ensure that we are treating our money better this year in 2026 with proper financial planning and management to make sure that our money is working for us. And also he has mentioned if you are deep in debt, it is not the end of it. There is a way out of it. That is the end of our first conversation here on BizCheck. In the next hour, we shall be talking about that 4.9% economic growth that Victor mentioned earlier. How exactly is that going to pan out for the country, looking at the economy 2026? Do stay with us. We'll be back in a minute.
In early 2021, the capital city of Nairobi was classified as the dirtiest city in Kenya, with the US Air Quality Index reading of 73. With a figure such as this, the air quality can be classified as moderate, according to recommendations by the World Health Organization. To that end, innovators partnered with county governments to deploy devices that could warn and monitor air quality.
Consumers of this data are mostly researchers and government entities. Research informs policy. And so both these parties need data. You cannot treat what you do not know.
Companies like Air Quality Systems say different devices can be deployed around the city depending on several parameters.
In terms of air quality monitors, we have from the most simplistic ones, the most basic ones, to now the most complex and most regulated gadgets.
Air quality testing is achieved using various devices, such as a passive sampler like this one, that work using the principle of diffusion, using a diffusion tube that is placed into a protective shelter to collect data by analyzing different gases. Another air monitor is a U-Pass sampler, which can be worn and is 99% accurate as a reference station. The other is a low-cost sensor, which is also fairly accurate and can be deployed in numbers. It has also sensors that collect data through its breathers, which are then analyzed and corrected on the computer. This notwithstanding, players in the sector, however, now say there has to be adequate sensitization on air quality for air quality monitoring to be enhanced across the country.
For awareness and culture, that has been a huge stumbling block, because you have to this thing is harming you, and they can't really feel it or smell it. A lot of education has to be done, and public awareness campaigns.
Let me explain this because it's interesting. Have you ever wondered where the smoking bans come from? Factories releasing CO2 into the air, or vehicles giving black smoke, and even the smoking ban from cigarettes. These policy directions come from data research that come from these particular devices. These air quality monitors inform the research that then brings out the policy directions that give these bans. Alan Auko, take one.
Well, this is Bizz and we want to get into the second conversation of the program. My colleague there on the sign language interpretation, that is Anne Wangeshi. I had earlier told you it's Caroline Njoroge. No, that is Anne Wangeshi. Apologies for that. And my name is Betty Kiptum. We want to talk about the 2026 economic outlook. Now, the World Bank as well as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, projected this year's GDP growth to be about 4.9%. Up from 4.7% that we recorded in 2024. And we would like to talk about what exactly will be driving this growth and what risks the economy is facing this year. To have this conversation is the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, that is ISPAC chairman, CPA Professor Elizabeth Kalunda. Karibu sana, Elizabeth, Professor.
Thank you so much, Betty, for having me here, and Happy New Year to the viewers.
Happy New Year to you too, on their behalf, of course. 4.9%. What does that number tell you, and what are the projections of ISPAC, if any?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Betty, for that question, and also just sitting here today at the beginning, at the early start of the year, to look at how the economy is going to be. Yes, looking at the projections that have been given by the CS National Treasury, we are projecting a 4.9% growth. I would say that is quite optimistic. And looking at the assumptions under which those projections have been done, it will be good to look at the numbers deeper to see, is that going to be a reality, or we are simply maybe just being very optimistic. Yeah, so as we continue the discussions, we are going to look at how are these numbers coming in. But generally, just looking at them before going into the depth of the matter, looking at the mega projects that the government is having, We have the Mau Rironi, that mega road that is there. We are hoping that by completion of that road, there's going to be improved transport, there's going to be opening of opportunities around those areas. But the big question should be, what are we going to be transporting using that road? Because I'll take that road as a pipeline, but so what are we going to be putting in? So we need to look at issues industrialization, and we need to look at are we preparing ourselves to, in terms of the other activities, other economic activities, to ensure that the 4.9 growth is a reality. Again, looking at maybe Impata's food security, we have also mega projects that the government is undertaking. We have the Galana Kulalu project, which with the, I mean, looking at the projections and where we are, maybe we might make it or not, but indeed, if we are going to put our focus on that, we are going to get the 4.9 growth. Yeah, but we'll look at the matters in depth so that we are able to see exactly what can we do so that we are actually there. Yeah,
I like that you mentioned the issue of construction of major projects, major infrastructure projects that are coming up. Construction rebound was one of the key drivers of the economy last year, and it's projected to continue driving the economy. There was also the clearing of pending bills in the construction sector, in the infrastructure sector, that really pushed that particular economic sector. So what do you foresee for 2026, specifically with the input of the infrastructure projects that are ongoing?
Okay, now looking at that one major project, that is the Rironi Mau Naivasha Road, the big question here would be, how is the funding coming in? And we've had a lot of discussion in terms of how it's funded, and we can see that clearly we've come in with a new model. Previously, all these projects were being funded 100% by borrowing, but we can see now the funding is internal. Actually, we can say it's a PPP arrangement of some sorts. We have NSSF that is actually using the Kenyans' money to support that infrastructure. We also have the China Road and Bridge Company working on that. And also now what we're anticipating that every shilling that we put in that project, the infrastructure fund, is going to actually attract another shilling. Actually 9 more shillings or 10. Yeah, so maybe what looking at that, it's a big plus for the country if it works well, and there's going to be transparency, there's going to be accountability, because we've reduced the borrowing cost, and more fundamentally, looking at the Chinese government funding this, we are actually coming out of the dollar situation fix that we've been in, and that has been quite instrumental in trying to stabilize the Kenyan currency to the US dollar. So for me, that's a big plus. But as an institute, what we need to watch out, because ISPAC is the, actually we are the custodians of financial integrity in the country. So what we need to ensure is that there's a lot of accountability, openness, transparency, and clarity in terms of the contracts that are there to ensure that the funding is going to be right. Again, looking at the previous years in terms of the growth in the construction sector, the most interesting statistics is that if you look at the growth in the construction sector vis-a-vis the constructions that are going on, including those of the housing levy, in a way the growth does not seem to really match. Yeah, because the growth is not as huge as the projects that we're being told. So we need to monitor what exactly is happening. And in terms of maybe the other multiplier effect, in terms of the jobs that are created there, are those jobs able to now just bring the multiplier effect to ensure that the Kenyans actually get jobs and the money is used in the country? Yeah.
I will dig deeper into ISPAC being the custodians of financial integrity in just a little bit. But let me ask you about the Rironi Mau Summit, the road, you know, linking Nairobi to the food basket of Kenya. That particular road, as you've mentioned, is going to open up very many opportunities, being that that region is the food basket of the country. So when you talked about the issue of industrialization.
Yes, sure.
What is your view in terms of the government investing in industrialization and ensuring that we are producing to take advantage of the infrastructure that is being laid out?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, now looking at the government priorities and for the current government, One of the key priorities that have been in the Vision 2030 and also in the beta economy is the issue of making Kenya a middle income, and this is going to be through industrialization. Now, unfortunately, looking at the statistics and even the the budget policy statement that has been out, we see there's a mismatch in terms of how much funds have been dedicated to just making industries grow and spur. Because looking at the FDI, we can see that there's been a lot of walkout of foreign companies from Kenya, and that is actually, most of them are closing the industry. So there we're actually missing the target. Again, looking at the issue of creating an enabling environment for industries to be built in Kenya. I think our tax regime has been quite unfair. It has been quite repressive, and it is actually sending out potential investors. Another thing on the industrialization bit is that if we look at probably maybe the factors that would make industries grow in Kenya, where we have the special economic zones, we've not seen a lot of growth in that area. So the government needs to be very specific, and looking at just the principles of industrialization. As a country, we need to actually stop having so many projects that are running and focus on key areas. And one of the areas that I would recommend, and even ISPAC would recommend, is the issue of industrialization. So let's look at which industries are these that we want. Yeah, and looking at Kenya as a country that we say our economy is agriculture-based or agriculture-run, we need to move from primary producers or primary exporters of the agricultural produce. Let us focus on agro-processing. Let us create value. Let us add value on our primary produce, and this will actually improve on our GDP. So looking at industrialization, my key maybe message here would be, let us focus on key priority areas, and connecting the food production that we're expecting to have in the Galana Kulalu area. I think that would be something that is going to be very significant. Again, adding on maybe the question of industrialization, if we are able to actually have industries maybe around the Galana Kulalu area, that would actually really improve the economy of that area, considering it's an area where there's no much development, but we can really create opportunities and make that area grow. Yeah, so those are some of the issues that if addressed, the reality of the 4.9 growth will no longer be a mirage or just numbers that we have missed projects, or I mean mixed projection, but it's going to be a reality that we can even hit more than that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With agriculture being at the core of Kenya's economy, there is the risk of the impending drought that is coming up. Of course, the weatherman already warned us about that and said Kenyans should prepare for that. At the same time, the government has been very intentional in investing in irrigation-based agriculture. So what do you foresee in terms of these risks towards agriculture, which is a core of our economy?
Yeah, actually, I come from the eastern region, right? And it's quite unfortunate that I was at home during the holidays, and I found that most of the areas, especially the Kitui, the Asal, not the Machakos area, there's actually food failure, there's serious crop failure, and that is an indicator that indeed, in terms of food security, there's a threat on that. In other areas, there was a lot of rain. I think the weather was quite unfair. It had excesses and maybe deficiencies on the other side. So looking at that area and maybe what the weatherman said, it's a matter that it's not new in Kenya. We've been having the unfair weather, and recently there was just a joke that was going around, but which I support what the president was saying. The president was saying that we actually don't need rain, we need water. Yeah, so if we are able to harness and trap the water that comes from the rain or get other sources of water, we are going to solve our food security problem. So the main thing would be, do we have dams? what is happening in the dams that are there. I know we've had previously projects that relate to the dam, but we've seen that they didn't actually take off. Some of them are white elephant projects. So these are some of the issues that we really need to check, because looking at Kenya, our policies, our plans, we still have this bucket that is leaking, because we put our plans, we put our monies in the bucket, but the bucket seems to have holes, and the holes are not few, they're quite big, so that whatever comes out is actually even more than what we are putting in. So let's watch on corruption. Let us watch and even trying to recover those amounts, prosecuting those who are actually who are perpetrating those corruptions on these projects that are going to, if they were to work, they are going to transform the nation. So let's check on some of those issues.
When you look at this country, the country has enough. There is enough. To cater for every need that Kenyans have. But somehow corruption has continued to grow despite the numerous attempts to deal with it. You said that accountants, ISPAC rather, is the custodian of financial integrity in your own words. What more can be done? And is this even something that we can deal with as a country?
Yeah, okay. Now, corruption is a cancer that is really eating our country, and it is a threat to the economic growth. It is a threat to the current generation and to future generations. As ISPAC, we've been having collaborations with EACC in terms of just trying to unearth some of these corruptions. Because looking at corruption and the way it's done in Kenya, it's the briefcase style, where from the accounting side, we capture the wrong numbers. So we've been trying to, not really trying, this is a drive that we've been doing in terms of ensuring that our accountants are ethical in their reporting, to ensure that our accountants have avenues to report corruption that happens under their eyes, because as accountants, we know sometimes you are forced to do things that are not right by those who, I mean, you're actually intimidated to do what is not right. So we have the whistleblowing policy, and looking again at matters corruption as an institute. Whenever we have any of our member who is mentioned on corruption issues, we have a disciplinary process that can actually, that is legal. We have the disciplinary committee that can follow up on members who are not doing what is right. And looking at the country generally from a corruption perspective, one of the key pillars of strategic plans of ISPAC is the issue of public interest. And that is where we need to safeguard the public resources by supporting all institutions that have been mandated to actually fight corruption. And as I previously said, EACC is really one of our big partners. I would also want to mention that some of this corruption, you'll find that the financial reports that are produced, actually, when the auditor goes through them, and now this is speaking on the space of the government where we have the Auditor General, we find that whatever recommendations, whatever findings that come up are findings where the Auditor General is saying that these books actually don't reflect the true financial position, and that's where we have the qualified reports. And what we are hoping that this year will happen is that we'll have legislative reforms. We'll be able to have support where all the recommendations of the Auditor General are going to be followed and reviewed, and any maybe any government entity that is not following on the recommendation, they should be put to task and even made to answer. Because looking at maybe last year when we were doing the evaluation, we found that around 6.1 maybe billion or trillion, a very huge figure of what is captured in the financial statement is actually is not supported by any documentation. So those are some of the avenues where we want to ensure that we are going to follow up on the findings that have been there, and we'll hope to get support, and our stakeholders are very positive in trying to have that legislative reform.
We've seen time and time again that these reports come out. Of course, the media goes through them very critically, bring up these stories about corruption and the allegations, and then it becomes a war of words between, county governments, national government officials, and the Office of the Auditor General. And so from your perspective, what can be done to make sure that the officers that are charged with ensuring financial integrity from your side as ISPAC, EACC, the OAG and all other officers, what can be done to ensure that they are more empowered or their work can be more productive in terms of dealing with corruption?
Okay, yeah. Now, one, for the accountants, what we are hoping should happen is that, and especially at the county level, we note that offices or positions that are supposed to be held by accountants are actually not held by accountants. So it's as simple as saying that you have a doctor, you have a hospital, you have people who are calling themselves doctors, and you're expecting these people to treat the patient. That will definitely not happen. So the same case is happening in our profession. And we have engaged with the Council of County Governors in our speeches, in our press releases, where, and even in our reports, we normally give the reports and giving the qualification of those who are actually preparing those books. So we've seen that a majority of them are not accountants, and we are appealing because from a legal point, some of these positions, the law is not clear that the positions must be held by an accountant. So we are hoping that, and we are really putting a strong fight on this, that these positions are going to be held by accountants. And when these positions are held by accountants, we as an institute, we have the mandate to regulate that profession. If you do what is not right, we'll take you through a disciplinary process. So that actually is going to really help in that. The other thing is that we also need to have citizens who are accountable, because currently what is happening is that the voice of Mwananchi has come very strong. So we want to empower Mwananchi to be, and this is from Wanjiko, let me just put it from Wanjiko, so that Wanjiko can be able to understand whenever the Auditor General releases the report, they should be able to understand what exactly does this mean. Because principally what that means is that the taxes that we pay, and you know how our pay slips are heavily taxed, the pay slips that the taxes that we pay, they're actually being mismanaged. And the reason why they're being mismanaged is because we don't have legislation that can actually protect that. So if Mwananchi will be knowing that any shilling stolen is actually a denial of a social service that they need, I think that will going to create a lot of traction. So we'll do the sensitization. We are going to look at how the laws can be amended. We are going to have engagement so that even without the law, maybe the governance will know that this position ideally should be held by a professional. So those are some of the things that are going on. And as I'd mentioned before, other than just having those advanced reports or the qualified reports, what we want to do is that we want to have a system or a policy that ensures that all recommendations are being addressed. Otherwise, whenever you look at the recommendation year after year, we always have the same reports where we say we have unaccounted for expenditure, we didn't get documented. The same story year after year. So we need to take action in terms of implementation. And if that is not done, then there should be a reprimand system to ensure that it is done.
Right.
Yeah.
Let us hope that those measures actually bear fruit, in the long term. Let's talk about another tenet of the economy this year, and there's the issue of borrowing. Not from a government perspective, but the private sector lending. Central Bank has been very intentional in bringing down the CBR. It's at around 9.5% now, down from 11.25 in early 2025. But when you look at the lending rates of the financial sector, they are not reflecting this. And you would expect that there's more private sector credit, but it's not reflecting. So what would be your thought on this?
Okay, now in terms of the interest rates, because the interest rates are again one of the parameters when we are looking at economic development and even the economic outlook, I would want to really commend the CBK through the Monetary Policy Committee for recently reducing the CBR rate to 9.5. Which is quite it went down from the previous one. And going now back to the question in terms of how comes the loans are not coming at that rate. Now, looking again at what is happening with the CBK, they have actually mandated the banks to use the the credit, the risk-based lending, so that when you are borrowing, then there should be a formula that is being used. And the banks actually have come up with the formulas. If you are a member of any bank or customer, I'm sure you've received mails telling you this is now the new rate. There's a formula that has been created where that formula will definitely, because now when it comes to the final lending rate, it's a model where you have that rate from the CBK, and then they use the risk premium and any other factor that has been allowed by the new formula. So the rates will not go down to 9.5, but they'll definitely be lower, and the CBK is really monitoring. The banks are actually under scrutiny in terms of what rates they are using. So I'm seeing the lending rates from the commercial banks will go down, and that's a very big plus in terms of looking at economic projections. But then now the key issue, which I'm foreseeing a big problem, looking at the budgetary policy statement and the budget estimates that were there, I think our budget for next year is around 4.6 trillion. We have a deficit of 1.1 trillion Kenya shillings. And looking at how the government is intending to fill in that gap, the government actually has is projecting that 1 trillion, I think 1.0 something, which is almost 92% of the deficit is going to be provided domestically. Now, and then the remainder, which is less than a trillion, is going to be funded using foreign debt. Now, for me, it's a story that it's a paradox in a way, because the government is in a deficit, the government is going to borrow locally and then now compete with the private sector lending. So I'm seeing a lot of maybe crowding out effect, that's the term we use, where the market will be so crowded, but the crowd is actually made by the government. So, and if you look at the risk of the government vis-a-vis a normal client, then any institution would go to where there's the less risk. So there's going to be definitely a squeeze in the credit available. And looking at it from an economic point of view, actually that will actually reduce the development that we want. Because if I have a farm, if I have a factory, if I want to borrow, I'll not be able to get that money, because there are other better options of doing that. So that's something that the government needs to relook, because a lot of domestic borrowing actually has a counter effect to the private sector borrowing in that country. But then now looking at it, maybe what the government is trying to balance is trying to ensure that in terms of our forex and even the stability of our currency, it's trying to maintain to retain that. So you can see this is a very delicate issue. So what the government can do, and even the lenders, can we have maybe special financial institutions that would lend to entrepreneurs, or even lend to industries, the industrialists, so that there's a dedicated fund that is out there that will help build these industries. And when we have industries, we are going to be producing for the local market, for the export. We are going to be creating jobs, and here we are going to have jobs that have dignity, because there's been a lot of conversation in terms of how is our workforce? What are these jobs that the president and the government has been saying they've been creating? The sector that has been having a lot of scrutiny is the housing sector, where we are having the housing levy and the houses that are out there. But looking at the jobs that are there, those are not jobs that we are going to give our graduates. How would a graduate do that? There would be better jobs. Let's look at jobs with dignity. And it is through industrialization that we can be able to get that. And then just again to follow up, because these things are so interrelated. For the economy to grow, you build pillar one, it creates pillar two and that. Looking again at the jobs that are there in the industries, how is our education system? Is it able to create entrepreneurs? So if we are going to fund our education, if we are going to have a revolution, a transformation in our education system that is going to create maybe job makers, to create people who can come up with industries, produce goods, I think that would be a very big win for the country. So we need to look at things holistically, not individually, because these things are intertwined. Yeah.
They truly are intertwined. One thing that we cannot not talk about during this conversation is politics.
Yes.
Yeah, the political risk that there is. 2027 is an election year for Kenya, and for some reason, our campaigns start in the middle of, the term, so they're already ongoing.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the economy this year?
Oh my. Yeah, so that's something that looking at the projections, the 4.9 growth, I don't think that has factored in that politics, because we know in Kenya this is not something new, but of late it's becoming quite serious. Once we've done the election, the next year immediately we are campaigning for the next period. And again, since we had the by-elections recently, we can actually see how the economy, how there's that correlation between the elections and the economy, because we can see the IEBC used around 600 million for the by-election of those. I think there were around 24 seats that were out there. Now, we are getting into the election season. 2027 will be a very highly contested election, because one, we have the Gen Z issue that came in that clearly was a pointer that the kind of leaders that we have are not the leaders that the young generation requires. So there's going to be a lot of heated campaigns around that. Again, there's the issue of the 1-term, 2-term, and the grand opposition. So looking at those factors, which in Kenya, the economy and politics cannot separate. I'm seeing a situation where a lot of funds for major projects, major social projects are going to be diverted to elections, to IEBC, and others maybe through other maybe constitutional or unconstitutional means, they are going to be used in the election. So I would really say that the economic outlook is going to be lower. In terms of the growth, definitely the 4.9 growth rate, unless other parameters are going to be higher so that they offset this, I'm seeing a situation where even the focus of our policy makers is going to be more on re-election than on development. And for me, what I would want to maybe request the government, or how the policies are made, is that the guys who make decisions about the growth of our country, these people should be separated from politicians. Because if we have politicians holding certain offices, definitely right now they're in the election mode. They are not into policy, they are not under development. So as an institute, we need to really ensure that what had been budgeted is actually what is going to be spent, and we ensure that every single tax that a Kenyan is taxed is actually going to go for development, not just going for politics, which I could say is money that has just gone, that has just disappeared with the wind. Yeah, so, and also, again, looking at being a just the eve of the politics, I'm seeing a lot of capital flight. Definitely investors, for them, it's a wait and see period, so they are waiting now. They want to see how the elections will go on. So it's quite unfortunate that we are in that situation. We have this ambitious economic outlook coming from the government, but things on the ground don't maybe support that. And again, to just add on the election, because the issue of geopolitics are also important. Looking at what is happening in now maybe the US, this is the superpower. We've seen what President Trump did to Venezuela, the issue of the oil that they have captured. Again, that might have an effect on the oil supply. We are yet to see exactly what's going to happen. There were some changes in the oil prices when they announced that they've captured the Venezuela oil. And again, looking at now some of the policies that are coming from the Trump or the US government, and one of these is going to really affect Kenya is I think early this week, the American government said that they have introduced a 1% tax on any remittances that will be sent outside maybe the formal or the regulated system. Now, if you look at our economy and even what is in the budgetary policy statement, there's the issue of the diaspora remittances. This really contribute a lot in terms of our foreign reserves and also just supporting the economy in the Kenya. So this might have an effect in a way. We are yet to see. So I'm hoping the money, the remittances that come to Kenya through the diaspora come from the conventional channels. Otherwise, if it comes the other side, that means they'll send less, because again, the other amount is going to be absorbed by the tax that is there. Yeah, so for me, what I would maybe urge them, our citizens in the diaspora, let them use the formal ways of sending money. Even for us as a country, we'll be able to know how much really do we get from the diaspora remittances. Yeah.
Right, I think that's a very wholesome answer to that question. Thank you for that. We are coming to an end of the conversation, Prof, and I'd like you to just give us your closing remarks, generally the outlook for 2026 for you.
Okay, now my closing remarks, which should resonate to maybe Wanjiko, who is the or in a layman way, is that when we are looking at the economic outlook, what we as Kenyans would want to see is that, one, are we able to afford the food? Are we able to put a meal on the table and a decent meal without spending so much? So maybe my outlook or my projection on that is that that might not be the reality, because one, we have the mist, the food prices will definitely go out because of the rains. Again, we have the disposable income that has gone down because again of the I think it's the NSSF contributions starting this year are going to be more, so we are going to have less in our pockets. Again, the other question would be, especially for the young ones, those who are in school, will they be able to get jobs? Because that again is another measure. Now, looking at how our economy is, we are churning out around 2 million graduates every year in the various categories. But again, the only jobs that we are creating are 1 million. So that means that there's going to be more unemployment. Now, the other issue that I would want to again look as just my closing shot is that for the private sector, for the industrialists, for those of us who want to start businesses, there'll be less money to borrow because of the crowding out of the government. So the government should try and relook on how will they, maybe unless they come up with maybe some innovative way that, like the infrastructure, the privatization issues that are coming out, then that is going to be an issue. Another issue that as just we wrap up is that will the Kenyan shilling be stable? Because that again will affect our imports, our export. Now, looking at the outlook, there's a likelihood that it might stabilize in a way, but we don't know how the elections will be there. And finally, not very finally, the second last finally is on the issue of what is the role of Mwananchi? For me, Mwananchi should be able to understand what is happening. They should be able to voice their voices whenever there's public participation. They should actually participate in any of the bills that are out there, especially that touch on us. And finally, to the government has promised that this year they are not going to introduce new taxes. What they will do is to increase the tax base. But my major concern, especially as a CPA, as the chairman of the institute, is that the new rules of e-teams, where every single expense for it to be allowable will have to go through the e-teams. Now that is actually for me a danger, because the very, very small micro businesses, they don't have the e-teams. So it means that any buyer is going to actually overstep that and go to the next level, and that might kill the economy. So Kenyans, please, let's embrace the year as it is. I wish you very well in this new year. Let us be vigilant. Thank you.
Let us be vigilant. Thank you very much. I have been speaking with CPA Professor Elizabeth Kalunda. She is the chairman of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, ISPAC, and we have been discussing the 2026 economic outlook for Kenya, of course, with the risks including the agriculture probably dipping because of the impending drought, as well as matters politics. But of course, as she says, there are some upsides. The construction industry infrastructure is also picking up really nicely, so we shall be on the lookout on how the economy shall go and continue to inform you. This has been Bizz Check. My name is Betty Kiptum, and Anne Wangeshi there is my colleague on the sign language interpretation. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your viewing. Coming up at the top of the hour will be Kurunzi Mashinani. Do stay with Channel 1. Bye-bye.
A current youth craze in Japan, nuikatsu, involves carrying around plush dolls known as nuigurumi and photographing them in various situations. These photos are then posted on social media. Fans are very creative, outfitting their plushes with handmade clothing and accessories. It's such fun recording adventures with my plushie. It's more than fun, it's so soothing to look after them and carry them around. They feel like family to me. With the growing popularity of nuikatsu, many shops have started selling accessories. In this arts and crafts store, for example, you can buy a plain plush body. Then, choose from a range of parts, such as eyes and brows, to create your own unique doll. Now there are even stores completely dedicated to the nuikatsu lifestyle. Along one wall are miniature plushie-sized photo booths,